Did you say John Ritchie? Okay. Good evening, Facebook and YouTube and wherever we are streaming. I'm Jack Wellman, and this is Wednesday Night Bible Study with Abundant Life Church. Before we start, real quick, we had a little bit of a dinner tonight, and I wanted to bring up, Jonathan, if you're ready. I know you're doing a million things right now at one time, but Acts 2:42. But it is incredibly important. That's okay. I'll move it away. It's incredibly important to continue to fellowship and continue to be together, in the Lord, and just you continue to stay within the will of God. We'll go back to 3 now. So she departed and went and gleaned into the field after the reapers, and she happened to come along the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the family of Elimelech. Now, if you can go to Leviticus 23:22, we're going to jump around just a little bit, but we need to understand why they didn't get mad at her for gleaning in their fields. 23:22. You're good. So this is something that God had designed from the beginning of time to make sure that the poor were fed. And this is why churches have food stores for people that need them. Anybody that needs should be able to come to a church and get what they need, because that's what churches are supposed to do, because that's what God has designed us to do. It says, when you reap the harvest of your land, and he's talking to the farmers, the people that grew these fields, moreover, you shall not reap to the very corners of the field, nor gather the gleaning of your harvest, which means don't take absolutely everything. You are to leave them for the needy and the alien, which means foreign people from the other land. And this is the best part right here. I am the Lord your God. So how do you argue when he ends a sentence like that? I am the Lord your God. You essentially don't. But this, and Jonathan gave me flack for this last time, is an original welfare plan that God set up for people. He's designed this so that people could come and take the rest of the harvest and they could be fed so that no one would go hungry. Because what do we read in Matthew? God takes care of everyone. You will never go hungry. And if you go hungry, then you're not talking to the right people. You're not going to your church. You're not coming to the people that you need to come to, the positive people in this world, the Christians in your life. If you have a struggle, go to your church. If you don't have a church, get a church. And then talk to them, and they will help you. And if they don't, come to Abundant Life, and we'll help you. All right, we can go to 2:4 now, Jonathan. Now behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said to the reapers, so now he came from Bethlehem to the fields where his guys were working, and he said, may the Lord be with you. And they said to him, may the Lord bless you. Can you imagine having a boss like that? Someone that comes to you, generally though, and they just are wishing the Lord's health on you, and that's what we all need to do to everyone constantly. I think we go into the store sometimes and we're short with people. I do it all the time too. You've got that person in front of you that's buying a lottery ticket, and you're wanting to put 20 on pump 12 or pump 6, and we're short with them. And we're short with everybody around them, and we're short with everybody around us. I have a hard time with traffic. A little bit of a defensive driver, but that's when we have to stop, and we have to pray, and we have to realize that we need to be patient with everyone. So 5 says, then Boaz said to his servants, who is in charge of the reapers? And this is how, when I've read this book so many times, and I know the outcome of the book. I don't know how many of you guys have actually read the book, but it's fantastic. And the way I read this is, well, whose young woman is this? Because you'll see why shortly. Let's go to 6. That was his initial attraction. The servant in charge of the reapers replied, she is the young Moabite woman, so they're still calling her a Moabite, who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. 7. And she said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. And she's pleading to him right now. Thus she came and she remained from the morning until now. So every time she came and she worked in the fields, she went from sun up to sundown. And she did not collect as much as you would think she did from doing that. We're going to find out that soon. Thus she came and she remained from morning until now, and she has been sitting in the house for a little while. Then Boaz said to Ruth, listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go and glean in another field, because she knew who Boaz was, and this was her closest relative right here. So she's trying to set him up. I don't want to say that, but you'll see soon. Do not glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maids. So Boaz, not necessarily knowing much about her, has already told her to come and stay and work in her fields and glean what she can from her fields. And why is that? 8 says, listen carefully, my daughter. And don't be worried about that statement. That was the way they used to talk back then. Do not go glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go from this one, but stay here with my maids. Go to the next one, Jonathan. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. And I'm a big fan of metaphors. And that's a huge metaphor inside of the Bible right there. Let your eyes be on the field which they reap, and go after them. So what does that mean? Jesus. It has to do with that Redeemer. Indeed, I have commanded the servants not to touch you. When you are thirsty, go to the water jars and drink where the servants draw. And this is where we're going to find out where Boaz truly the Redeemer. Let your eyes, are we on 9 now? Or 10, Jonathan? Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? So can anybody kind of take away anything from that? What does that sound like? Will you go back, Jonathan, please? She fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and this is what we're saying to Jesus. Why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? That's what we say to Jesus. So it's going to be an interesting story. My mother and my father were married about 6 months, probably. For the beginning portion of my life, I was about 6 months old when they divorced. My mother came out one day. My father, who's a pastor right now, has been a pastor my entire life. She came out, and he was laying face down in the dirt. And she came out and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm praying to Jesus. I'm breaking myself down, and I'm praying myself to Jesus. And I'm going to call you out here, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm sure you're going to watch this. That was at the point that she left him. And that is at the point at when many humans draw the line. You can either lay on your face in front of Jesus, or you can just stand up and walk next to him. You have to lay yourself in front of Jesus. And this specifically says what we say to Christ: why have I found favor in your sight? We're foreigners. We do not have the right to be loved by Christ. We have this grace that he has given us that we do not deserve. Go to 11. Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me. So he found out, and we found out in Ruth 1, that when they walked in, everybody knew Naomi. And so you know how small towns work, or I guess big towns now too. It's essentially gossip. So he found out essentially immediately what had happened. He said, after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me, and how you left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and came to a people that you did not previously know. And as we covered in Ruth 1, they had a different God. They had different elders. They had a completely different situation. So for her to leave that aside and come after the God of Israel, or the God of the universe, is amazing. Next one, Jonathan. May the Lord reward your work, and your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. And that applies to all of us bowing down to God. So 13. Then she said, I have found favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me, and indeed have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not one of your maidservants. Next one. And at mealtime Boaz said to her, come here, that you may eat of the bread and dip your piece of bread in the vinegar. So she sat beside the reapers, and she served her roasted grain, and she ate and was satisfied and had some left. I don't know if you guys have ever had just roasted grain before. I have, because my wife's I don't want to call her a hippie, but she has a mortar and pestle, and she grinds up all these amazing things, but it's actually decent. But this is dinner time. She had stayed there from the very beginning to dinner time, and she's going to stay there afterwards, as we'll see when we go to the next one. 15, Jonathan, please. So when she rose to glean, Boaz commanded his servants, saying, let her glean among the sheaves, and do not insult her. Next one. Also, you shall purposefully pull out for her some grain from the bundles and leave it that she may glean, and do not rebuke her. So not only is he following God's law at this point, but he is also purposefully leaving extra for her. And I looked up the word sheaf, and it's sheaves is just plural for sheaf, but one of the bundles in which cereal plants, as wheat, rye, etc., are reaping. And an ephah is coming up soon, is about 9 gallons, which it is to us. But I had a discussion with my son the other day about cereal plants, and he was like, well, cereal, it's Captain Crunch. And I'm like, oh, no. When my wife and I make grits in the morning, that's cereal. That's what real cereal is. Jonathan, you can go to the next one. So she gleaned, which is collecting, in the field until the evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about what we had talked about, an ephah of barley. Jonathan, are you able to pull up that video, or is it too far gone? Because I had a video of what it looks like exactly to thresh and gather grain with hand, and it is insanely hard. It's ridiculous, and the amount of work that they did all day long to produce a very small amount of grain, that's what she did, and that's what she did all day long, and that's what Boaz allowed her to do. But this is beating out the grain by hand, which is pretty amazing. So now you see the amount of grain that she had collected in the bottom of that bucket? That's about a day's worth for one person. That's what she went through day in and day out to just get that small amount. And she was only trying to feed her mother and herself, but that was her whole day's work. And of course she went to this field for a certain reason, which we're going to find out in chapter 3 and 4, which is amazing. But you can go ahead and go to 18, Jonathan. She took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. So she also took it out and gave Naomi what she had left, after which she was satisfied. So in the very beginning, when she sat down to dinner with Boaz and all of his reapers and his maidens and all that stuff, what she had left over, she broke that piece of bread off, stuck it in her pocket, and brought it home to her mom. And that's just amazing. We'll go to 19 now. Her mother-in-law then said to her, "Where did you glean today?" Which I'm pretty sure she already knew. "And where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed." And this is the first portion of the transition we saw from the Naomi and Ruth chapter 1, where she was a curser. She was cursing God, everything. She said she was literally bitter. Her name was bitter from there. She's turning into a blesser now because of what the Lord had done for her. Had she perhaps stayed in the promised land like the Lord told her to stay, she might not have ever had to turn into a curser. But where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who took notice of you be blessed. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The name of the man with whom I had worked today is Boaz." Next one. And this is a part of where we don't know who he is necessarily. A lot of historians think that Boaz might be Naomi's first cousin, which comes in line with just keeping within the family as far as widows and stuff is concerned. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed of the Lord, who has not withdrawn his kindness to the living and to the dead." Again, Naomi said to her, "The man is a relative. He is one of our closest relatives." And I love this portion here because I feel like, are we going to go to 21, Jonathan? I feel like this is a an excited teenager coming home and running to her mom and telling her what kind of a day she's had. And she said, then Ruth the Moabitess said, they're still calling her a Moabitess, furthermore, he said to me, you should stay close to my servants until they have finished my harvest. Is there 22, Jonathan? Naomi said to Ruth, to her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his maids, so that others do not fall upon you in the field. And we're not necessarily sure what that means, if she would be attacked. I think she was kind of guiding her in that direction, but that also goes along in line with that. God is always guiding us in a direction. I think the field, essentially in this book, not that this is not completely historically accurate, is a metaphor for God is guiding us towards a field. And the people that play a role in our lives are also helping us to guide us towards that field. Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, oh, next one, Jonathan, sorry. So she stayed close by the maids of Boaz in order to glean until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So those last three verses, essentially, she came running into her home, and she was like, Mom, let me tell you about this real quick. I went to this guy's field, and his name was Boaz, and he just gave me all this food and all this and that, and she said, well, that's good. Just keep on the path. And that's what we all need to do, is just keep on the path, which is amazing that Naomi still ran from God. How many people do we know in the Bible that ran from God? How many of us have ran from God? How many of us have ran from God and been brought back still? I think a lot of us are constantly running from God and still being brought back. But if we can allow God to influence us enough in our lives to guide us to those fields, not forsaking those that are also guiding us in our lives, which is incredibly important, to listen to the people. I'm going to say this right now. If you're driving down the road and you see someone stopped on, standing on the side of the road, drinking a beer or just doing whatever they're doing, and God says something to you and they say, look, you need to stop and talk to that person, you need to stop and talk to that person. This is a part of the story of Naomi, is that this didn't happen on accident. This is literally the line of Jesus Christ, because their great-grandson is, guess who? Can anyone tell me who their great-grandson is in the house? King David. Yes, oh, you're just so close. He's not slow, he was the fastest one here. He said that God can take this Moabitess, who was what they would call back in the day a pagan, essentially, someone that didn't believe in God, someone that believed in other gods, that he can take someone like that, and this is what Jesus has done for everybody, and which is just amazing. He takes the worst person you can think of, who has the worst ideals, and he connects them with what really needs to happen, and he guides them to the field, and then they become saved, they become redeemed. And that's what Boaz is going to do for her, as we're going to see in these next two chapters. He's going to slowly redeem her. And of course, that, historically speaking, means that he's bringing her back into the family, because right now all she has is her mother-in-law. She's not in the family necessarily, because she's not blood related to Naomi. Ruth and Naomi are nothing. They were only connected by their son. That's the only thing they were connected by. So when that's taken out, which is with us, when these things are taken out of the middle of our lives and we're left with just this wickedness and then us, who's the person that brings us right back into the middle? Jesus. Doesn't really matter what's going on in your life. Doesn't really matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what you're going to do, because I assure you, God knows what you're going to do. He was there when you were born. He's there when you die, and he's there when you sin. You need to remember that mediator, that redeemer, that person like Christ, who is going to let you into his field. He's going to let you into his field and allow you to glean from what he has created. And that's what we need to continue to do, is glean from his field and continue to pick and thresh, as you saw in the video. That's our entire lives are going to be like that. We're going to continuously just be beating at the wheat. That's our destiny, essentially. But what does it build in heaven? When you sit here on the earth and you go to those fields and you thresh constantly and you're just beating the wheat and you feel like you're just exhausted and you're like, oh, I'm just so much sin and I can't take anymore. He's going to come in and he's going to redeem you. And that is the metaphor of chapter 2. And like I said, it is historically accurate, but there's metaphors inside of the Bible all over if you look for them and you read them over and over again. And like it says in Psalms, Selah, stop, meditate on it, and just read it and think about it and listen to it. Stop, pray, listen to God. Then you'll understand every portion of this story. So I also urge you guys to go back and read Ruth 1, read Ruth 2. Don't listen to what I have to say, but go back and read it for yourself, because Scripture is alive and active, and God will reveal to you exactly what he wants you to hear. So go back and read it for yourselves. Study. Study constantly. Meditate on it. But I love you guys. You guys have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next Wednesday.